This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Hey guys, this is a PSA for all of my renters out there. If you rent your home, you need to check out Built because, let's be real, you guys, you should be earning your favorite airline miles and hotel points with one of your biggest monthly expenses. There's no cost to join, and just by paying rent, you unlock flexible points that can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. When you pay rent through Built, you unlock two powerful benefits. First, you earn one of the industry's most valuable points on rent every month. No matter where you live or who your landlord is, your rent now works for you. Second, you gain access to exclusive neighborhood benefits in your city. Built's neighborhood benefits are things like extra points on dining out, complimentary post-workout shakes, free mats or towels at your favorite fitness studios, and unique experiences that only Built members can access. And when you're ready to travel, Built points can be converted to your favorite miles and hotel points around the world, meaning your rent can literally take you places. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, what are you waiting for? Start paying rent through Built and take advantage of your neighborhood benefits by going to joinbuilt.com/bigmad. That's JOINBILT.com/bigmad. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Join built.com/bigmad to sign up for Built today. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Big Mad True Crime, where we get big mad over true crime. I'm your host, Heather Ashley, and today's case is out of the Houston, Texas area. Small talk sucks, so let's dive in. Elizabeth Nellie, aka Liz, was the kind of person who always saw the best in people. When you talked, she listened, she was incredibly thoughtful, and more than anything, she genuinely wanted to make a difference in this world. Liz was always going out of her way to make people happy and, more importantly, to make sure that they always felt seen. Liz graduated from Klein Collins High School and after that enrolled at Sam Houston State University. It was there she met a man named Sergio Barraza, and the sparks were instantly flying. They bonded over their mutual love of Harry Potter and Star Wars, and their shared obsession with making these elaborate, amazing costumes from both of those franchises. They were actually so passionate about it that they later volunteered together as part of the 501st Legion, which is a group of wholesome humans that all dress up together as Star Wars characters and then visit kids in hospitals around Houston. Liz's personal favorite was dressing up as a stormtrooper. According to Who Killed Liz Barraza, which is a website run by Liz's parents, 2 years after meeting, Liz and Sergio got married. The couple, along with their adorable dog Diesel, moved into the Princeton Place subdivision in Tomball, which is a suburb just out of Houston. They settled into a cozy little house in the 8600 block of Cedar Walk Drive. The Barrazas loved their home and being part of their own little community. One of their neighbors described them as friendly, welcoming, and outgoing, always quick to wave and smile at people passing by. By January of 2019, Liz and Sergio were closing in on 5 years of marriage together. To celebrate, they booked a trip to Orlando, Florida, with plans to leave on Sunday, January 27th, 2019. To say that they were excited about this trip, which included time at Universal Studios, would have been a massive understatement. If you're a Harry Potter fan at all, like Liz and Sergio, you would know that going to Universal is a pretty big deal. Liz was actually so excited that she had picked out new luggage that looked just like the trunks Harry Potter had taken when he went to Hogwarts. She even made custom Harry Potter shoes to match. Liz was counting down the days until she could enjoy her Potter world, but before they could leave, it was garage sale time because a little extra money never hurt anyone, plus coming back to a decluttered home is always a welcome bonus. To get ready for the garage sale, Liz put in leave for Friday the 25th, with Sergio scheduled to work as usual, but he did do some legwork the night before. On Thursday, January 25th, Liz and Sergio put up a few garage signs around the neighborhood. They didn't post anything about it on social media, but they did let a few friends and family know. Hey guys, a while back I watched this documentary about the ocean that changed my view on seafood forever. I learned that while the ocean is resilient, it's not always respected. And because of that, I did take a short break from eating seafood so I could make even the tiniest dent in its recovery. Now, during that break, I absolutely miss seafood because I love it, and I knew that when I started eating seafood again, I was going to make sure that it was coming from sources that respected our oceans, which is where Wild Alaskan comes in. Wild Alaskan is 100% wild caught and never farmed. Each fish is caught from Alaska, and every order supports sustainable harvesting practices. That means no antibiotics, no GMOs, and additives, just real fish that support healthy oceans and fishing communities. Oh, and Wild Alaskan is frozen off the boat to lock in taste, texture, and nutrients like those ever-important omega-3s. Without a doubt, Wild Alaskan is the best way to get wild-caught, perfectly portioned, nutrient-dense seafood delivered directly to your door. It's also 100% risk-free. If you're not completely satisfied with your first box, they'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. I got my first box of Wild Alaskan a couple of months ago, and it was incredible. Just the look of the fish that was delivered was better than anything I have ever seen at the grocery store. And do not worry, you guys, it was very, very much still frozen. Each package was perfectly portioned, and let me tell you, it was delicious. The first thing we tried was the salmon, and it was perfection. The texture was incredible, and it just tasted clean. And it felt so good knowing that what I was eating was coming from a company that respects the ocean it came from. They even threw in these little cooking tips, which was so sweet and very helpful. I cannot wait to try everything they have. Not all fish are the same. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/bigmad for $35 off your first box of premium wild-caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/bigmad for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. At around 6:15 a.m. on Friday morning, January 25th, Liz started setting up everything for that yard sale. For the next 30 minutes, she and Sergio worked together to arrange different items outside in the driveway. Sergio headed out for work just after 6:45 a.m., but just minutes later at 6:53, the neighbor across the street from the Barraza home called 911. He said he had just heard 4 gunshots, and when he looked outside, saw a Nissan Frontier, which is a pickup truck, leaving the area. And while that neighbor was on the phone with 911, 2 other neighbors called in the exact same thing. But one of them added a horrifying detail. Someone was lying in the Barraza's driveway. Police got to the home within minutes of those calls and found that the person lying in that driveway was Liz. She had been shot 4 times, but she was still alive. A life flight was called in because while still alive, Liz was undoubtedly struggling, and within 20 minutes, she was on her way to the hospital in critical condition. And I do know that 20 minutes does feel like a long time here, but oftentimes the wait does wind up being a time saver because instead of taking an ambulance to the nearest hospital, the victim is instead flown to the most capable hospital, which is quicker to access via helicopter. While Liz was on her way to the hospital, officers went inside of her home to see if there was anything there that might give them any insight into why she was targeted. As soon as they opened the door, though, the alarm went off, which Liz had set to trigger the moment it was opened. That alarm system was connected to Liz's parents' account, Rosemary and Bob, so when they got the alert, they immediately tried to call her, but they got no response. With no answer to the call and no one disarming the alarm, they immediately got into the car and headed towards her house. They pulled up just after 7:35 a.m., and nothing in this world could have prepared them for what they were about to be told. Officers had the heart-wrenching task of telling them that their daughter had been shot multiple times in her driveway and was currently being flown to the hospital. They then had to share that exact same news with Sergio, who showed up just 2 minutes later. And since he was Liz's husband, they did detain him for questioning while Bob and Rosemary rushed to the hospital. According to Investigation Discovery, Sergio told officers that he'd been at work when he got the same alarm notification that Rosemary and Bob had gotten. Wondering what in the world was going on and why no one had disarmed it, he checked the live feed from their Ring camera and saw police tape, squad cars, and an officer outside of his house. Panicking, he looked through the saved footage and found a recording where Liz could be heard screaming as shots rang out. Because of the camera angle, he couldn't see what was happening, but he could hear it, and he immediately rushed home. Sergio shared that video with police, and at 6:52 a.m., the person who shot Liz could be seen walking into the driveway, but everything that happened after that was off camera, which is either a coincidence or strategic planning here. Thanks to that audio, though, officers could hear Liz say good morning. Then for about 6 seconds, there was what seemed like silence before 3 shots rang out. After that, you could hear Liz scream, and a few seconds after that, a 4th shot was fired. Based on the footage and audio alone, there was no doubt that Liz had been shot in cold blood. There was no obvious altercation, and Liz's recorded interaction was polite, as she always was. The idea that this would happen to Liz, of all people, was horrifying, but you might not have gotten that from Sergio's reaction. According to police, when he showed them the footage of his wife screaming as she was shot, he didn't show any emotion at all. He didn't even seem upset. One officer's patrol car actually recorded audio of a conversation between Sergio and another officer, and in that recording, Sergio can be heard saying, "Oh my god, dude, this is crazy, so they just fucking shot her and left?" To officers, something seemed off here, but we do all know that everyone reacts to trauma differently, and feelings are not facts, so they did release Sergio from questioning. After being released, Sergio stayed behind to talk to neighbors and reporters. According to a timeline put together by Liz's parents, Sergio didn't show up to the hospital until that afternoon, hours later. By the time he got there, Liz was on life support and no one knew if she was going to survive. With everything so up in the air, Sergio and Bob, Liz's dad, had to discuss organ donation options, which was nothing they ever expected to do when they woke up that morning. While Liz's family was having to make gut-wrenching decisions, detectives were still at the Barraza home processing the scene. There was no murder weapon left behind and no shell casings either, which meant that the shooter either picked the casings up or a revolver was used. And after finding a .380 round, detectives suspected it was the latter, which is a revolver. Detectives also canvassed the neighborhood, hoping that anyone might have seen what happened, but unfortunately, no one had. They'd only heard the gunshots, then looked outside afterward. That's when they spotted that truck. It wasn't what detectives were hoping for, but there was a silver lining. That neighbor directly across the street, the one who called 911, had a security camera that pointed directly at the Barraza home. Police immediately pulled that footage and just like that, realized that the entire shooting had been caught on video. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack sponsor. IQ Bar is the better for you, plant-based protein snacks made with brain-boosting nutrients to refuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without the sugar crash. You guys know that I am a workaholic during the week, and I stay laser-focused from 9 a.m. until around 6 p.m. I love my jobs, but when something big is going on, sometimes I just forget the world around me, and that can include forgetting to eat. I do know that sounds ridiculous, but I do not make the rules, and IQ Bar has been my daily little hack to get in something delicious and good for me without having to stop everything I'm doing. IQ Bar's plant protein bars are packed with high-quality ingredients to help keep you physically and mentally fit and are totally free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial sweeteners for a natural, anytime snack you can look forward to like I very much do. And their flavor game is on point, you guys, with 9 amazing flavors, including mint chocolate chip, which is my personal favorite, chocolate sea salt, banana nut, which is also incredible, toasted coconut chip, lemon blueberry, also so good, and peanut butter chip. Honestly, I have never tried an IQ bar that I didn't immediately want more of. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products plus get free shipping. To get your 20% off, text BIG to 64,000. Text BIG to 64,000. That's BIG to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. At exactly 6:52 a.m., a Nissan Frontier pulled up and parked on the curb across from the Barraza home. The truck stayed running with the headlights on while the driver stepped out. Through that alone, the driver clearly never intended to shoot her in a drive-by. That was not part of their plan. This person intended to shoot her at close range, which says something. They also wanted to make sure that they could get away as quickly as possible, so they kept their truck running. This was personal and this was planned, and planned by someone who seemed to know Liz was going to be outside before 7 a.m. on a Friday morning. And that narrows it down to friends, family, and the few people who would have seen the signs that the Barrazas put up around the neighborhood the night before. According to what police later told Investigation Discovery, the video quality wasn't great. I mean, it rarely is, but they could still make out a few details. The suspect appeared to be wearing knee-high boots, possibly a muumuu-style dress, a long jacket or robe, and maybe even a wig. Detectives couldn't say for sure whether it was a man or a woman, but I think it's clear here that that was kind of the entire point, in my opinion. The footage showed the driver quickly crossing the street and walking up the driveway where Liz was still setting up for the sale. As the person got closer, they pulled out a gun and Liz instinctively backed away. The two exchanged words for about 6 seconds, but whatever was said wasn't audible. The person then shot Liz 3 times and she collapsed in her driveway. The shooter then stepped over her and then fired a final shot at point-blank range before running back to the truck. The entire attack lasted just 30 seconds. The disguise, the proximity, and that 4th shot all seem to scream personal and not random. Not some robbery gone wrong. I mean, they left $100 behind in a cash box. Plus, who robs a pre-garage sale with a gun on a Friday, a weekday, at the exact time that you would have expected people to be around and leaving for work? Because the security footage wasn't clear, police weren't able to get a good view of the truck's license plate, so they started trying to track down additional footage from the area. They pulled the footage from nearby businesses and homes and were slowly able to piece together a more detailed timeline of the truck's movements. At around 2 a.m. on the morning of the murder, a Nissan Frontier drove past the Barraza home. Then at 6:47 a.m., it came back. This time, it pulled into a parking lot of a school near Liz and Sergio's house. 1 minute later, the truck left the lot and parked on a nearby street. It was at that exact moment, 6:48 a.m., that Sergio left for work. A few minutes later, at 6:51, the Frontier started heading back towards the Barraza home again, and at 6:52, it made a 3-point turn and parked across the street. Within 30 seconds, the driver got out, shot Liz 4 times, got back in the Nissan, and drove off. At 6:55 a.m., the truck exited the neighborhood, but then made a U-turn and came right back in. Liz's doorbell camera caught it driving past the house again just minutes after the shooting, which is so fucking bizarre here. Whoever this was seemed to want to make sure that she wasn't moving or something, but risked being caught to do that. They went right back to the place where they had to know police would be responding. After doubling back to, I guess, look at what they had done, the truck then left the neighborhood for good, and unfortunately, police lost track of it. According to KPRC2, based on everything detectives had seen, they believe the killer drove by earlier that morning to scope things out, then returned just after 6:45 a.m. and waited in the school parking lot for Sergio to leave. This person seemed to be aware that Sergio was working that day and that Liz wasn't. On any other day, Liz would have already been on her way to work at that point. Everything detectives had uncovered thus far told them that Liz's murder was not random. It was meticulously planned, and the outcome mattered to the shooter, which is why he circled back, risking getting caught. The risk of getting caught was worth it to them to make sure that they had done what they came to do. Now, clearly it wasn't Sergio, but they did seem to know an awful lot about him and his wife's patterns. Detectives later stated, "I feel they contacted somebody and said, 'Hey, the job's done.' And then that person said, 'Are you sure?' And they turned around and drove by the scene one more time." Trying to track down who the shooter might be, footage of the murder and the Nissan Frontier were released to the public almost immediately. Detectives hoped that someone would recognize the truck, and let's be real here, doesn't feel like there's a ton of Nissan pickups rolling around any street if we're being honest. And while police combed through the tips that resulted, Liz's family stayed by her side in the hospital. There was hope that she might pull through, but on January 26, just one day after the shooting, Liz succumbed to her injuries. Her corneas, her liver, her heart, and both of her kidneys were donated, saving 4 lives and giving one person the gift of sight. As Liz's family mourned her loss, detectives continued tracking down leads. They looked at hundreds of trucks that matched the Nissan, including rental vehicles, but nothing panned out. They also asked Sergio and Liz's parents to review the surveillance footage to see if maybe they recognized the truck or the shooter, but they didn't recognize either. Liz's father, Bob, told Investigation Discovery that when Liz said good morning to the shooter as they walked up, it said to him that she didn't know this person. He believed she probably just assumed they were someone who thought the garage sale was open. Liz's mom, Rosemary, said the hardest part was watching Liz step back right after she noticed the person had a gun. She said it was clear Liz was afraid, and knowing her daughter felt that way in her final moments destroyed her. As the investigation continued, detectives worked the case from every possible angle, and as I'm sure we all expect at this point, they took a hard look at Sergio. They knew he couldn't have been the shooter. He had a verifiable alibi. He was indeed on his way to work when the shooting happened, and he didn't match the description of the person seen in the footage. But that didn't rule him out entirely. Detectives started to wonder if maybe Sergio had hired someone to kill Liz. They questioned him about her life insurance, and he said that he thought it came from her job, but didn't believe it was very much money. Wondering themselves, detectives did look into it, and they found that the policy was worth $250,000, but if Liz's death was ruled accidental, the payout doubled to $500,000, and money is certainly always a possible motive. From there, detectives dug into Liz and Sergio's relationship, looking for any signs of trouble. They talked to friends and family and went through each of their phones, but they didn't find anything suspicious at all. From the outside, and frankly, even from the inside, they looked like a happy couple, just two people building a comfortable life together. Something still just didn't feel right though, so detectives kept digging. They checked Sergio's bank records, but there was nothing unusual there either. Not before Liz's murder, nor after. They even asked him to take a polygraph, which he agreed to, and according to police, he passed. 0 plus 0 plus 0 does indeed equal 0, which meant that detectives were back to square one at this point.
The Disney Plus Hulu Max bundle. It's the ultimate bundle for an unbelievable price. Plans starting at $16.99 a month. Get it and watch Marvel Television's Ironheart on Disney Plus.
I want to build something iconic.
A new season of The Bear on Hulu.
We can make people happy.
And The Epic, a Minecraft movie on Max.
Anything you can imagine is possible.
The Disney Plus Hulu Max bundle. Plans starting at $16.99 a month. All these and more streaming soon. Terms apply. Visit DisneyPlusHuluMaxBundle.com for details.
On February 6th, Crime Stoppers of Houston held a press conference to update the public and announce a $20,000 reward for information. The sheriff's office promised Liz's family and the public that they were doing everything they could to bring her killer to justice. Unfortunately, they still didn't have a clear description of the shooter. The video just was not good enough, and from that distance, they still couldn't definitively say whether the killer was a male or female. They were confident about one thing, though, and that was that truck. Law enforcement said they were almost certain it was a black 2013 to 2019 Nissan Frontier, a four-door crew cab Pro 4X model. At the press conference, Bob and Sergio both addressed the public, Bob saying, "A coward drove up, approached my daughter, and forever changed our lives. An unknown assailant shot and killed an unarmed and defenseless woman in a brutal act that demands justice. We never imagined a life without her. We still can't." Sergio added, "My wife Liz was a beautiful person with the kindest of souls. Tragically, someone stole that away from us on the morning of January 25th. I don't understand how someone could do this to her. She didn't deserve to pass away like this. How someone could be so monstrous to commit an act like this, I just really can't understand. I had to trade our 5th anniversary for a funeral. We need justice for Liz. I need justice for Liz. I love you, Liz. As the search for answers continued, detectives shifted their focus back to the shooter and how this person could have pulled off such a targeted attack. There were a lot of things the killer had to know ahead of time, like where Liz lived, that she was organizing a garage sale that morning and that she'd be there alone, what kind of car Sergio drove, and how to walk up to the house without being seen on the Ring camera, just heard. That is some insider knowledge shit, if not the luckiest shitbag in the history of mankind, and I'm not one that's big on coincidences. Detectives needed to put together a list of everyone who would have had every single piece of that information, and like we mentioned earlier, Liz had only told a handful of friends and family that she was even having this sale. She hadn't posted about it on social media, and she and Sergio had only put up 2 signs in the entire neighborhood. You would have had to have been in the neighborhood to even see it, but no one in that neighborhood seemed to have that Nissan truck or even recognized it. Next, detectives learned that since Liz had taken off work to host this sale, all of her co-workers knew about it, but all of them were quickly ruled out as suspects, as detectives confirmed, one by one, that each of them was at work when the shooting happened. So they were back to looking at just a small group of family and friends. Detectives looked into each and every one of them, but they could not find any single person who had any kind of motive to want Liz dead. With nothing else to go on, they went back to that surveillance footage thinking that maybe they missed something. Maybe there's something in that we're just not paying attention to, so they scoured every single inch and millisecond of that footage over and over, and that's when they honed in on the shooter's boots. They were light-colored, knee-high boots, almost like something a stormtrooper would wear, and Liz had dressed up as a stormtrooper when volunteering for the 501st Legion. Detectives asked Sergio if anyone in the 501st might have some kind of grudge against Liz, but Sergio couldn't think of anyone. Detectives vetted every single member of that group anyway, but again, no one stood out. Not a single person had any reason to want Liz dead. January 25th, 2020 marked 1 year since Liz had been killed, and it was still unsolved. To keep her case in the media and to make sure that no one forgot her name, her family spoke to ABC 13. Sergio described the day Liz was murdered as the worst day of his life. He said he and Liz should still be together planning their next anniversary trip, not mourning the one they never got to take. Liz's father, Bob, said that her murder didn't make any sense. He knew in his heart that it wasn't random, but he couldn't think of a single reason why anyone would want to kill her. Maybe once they found out who did it, they would figure out why, but even then, he said, the why would never truly make sense. The lead detective also spoke to the media and, as a surprise to everyone, hinted that progress might be coming. He said a new warrant had been issued, but he didn't elaborate any further. He told reporters, "I feel that the results of the warrant will be critical in the investigation and most likely will expose a suspect and who's responsible for this." But nothing ever came of it. By January of 2021, 2 years after Liz's murder, KHOU 11 reported that Sergio and Bob were still very close. In fact, they had started building a droid together in Liz's memory that they wound up naming R2LZ. Bob said, "Our coping mechanism is to focus on doing things that she would have done. Just because she was murdered doesn't mean the good she was doing ends." He even became an honorary member of the 501st so he could continue Liz's mission of bringing joy to others and giving back. In January of 2022, Bob and Rosemary sat down with KHOU 11 again, to talk about where the case stood 3 years later and what it felt like to have no answers. They said they still don't know why Liz was killed. They couldn't think of anyone who would have wanted to hurt her, but they weren't giving up. Bob promised they would keep fighting for justice because Liz deserved that. He said they wanted to get the person who did this off the street and make sure they were held accountable. Rosemary added, "I think it can be solved. I wholeheartedly want it to be solved. I don't know how long it will take, but you know what? For as long as it takes, we're going to be out there and we're going to be fighting for it because somebody does know something." That same month, another press conference was held, and the sheriff's office announced a $50,000 reward for information that could help solve Liz's case. They also shared a brief update stating that detectives had recently traveled to Miami to interview a person of interest. The investigation was still active, and while they were continuing to follow leads, they still needed more information. At the press conference, Sergio stated, "I just hope this helps, and I hope someone steps up. We need somebody to do the right thing. We need justice for Liz, and we hope to get that this year." By January of 2023, it had been 4 years since Liz was killed, and the case was still open. Police said the investigation was ongoing and that at this point, everyone was still considered a suspect until they figured out who had pulled the trigger. Bob and Rosemary sat down with KHOU 11 for another interview where Bob said what he and Rosemary wanted most was to see the people responsible held accountable and to make sure no other family ever has to endure what they have. They also gave some more insight into Liz and Sergio's marriage. Bob shared they were two wonderful people, and when they were together, they were even better. Rosemary added, Liz was such a kind person. Maybe somebody was jealous of her. Maybe they were jealous of Sergio and Liz's relationship. Sergio, who had since remarried, also spoke to KHOU 11 and said he knew many still considered him the prime suspect in Liz's murder. He said, "I know people immediately say it was the husband who did it. I understand that. But you had to know Liz and I. You had to see us. I still love her to this day. Liz was amazing. It was like a fairy tale that we had together."
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
In December of 2023, the Texas Rangers and the FBI joined the investigation into Liz's murder. The lead sheriff's detective said their involvement brought new resources and expertise, allowing them to take another look at the evidence and quickly follow up on fresh leads. The detective said he believed they were closer than ever to solving her case. He explained that over the years, they had gathered new evidence. He didn't go into any specifics since the case is still active, but he made it clear that they were continuing to follow leads across the country. In January of 2025, 6 years had passed since Liz was murdered in her driveway. Her parents spoke to Fox 26 about what that kind of loss feels like. Bob said, "Grief comes in waves. Sometimes it's little waves that come at your feet, and sometimes it's a tsunami." Rosemary added, "Anything and everything will kind of jump out at you, and you'll feel that pain." Sergio spoke to the media as well, saying that he misses Liz every day and is still seeking justice. At the same time, he continues to maintain his innocence, saying, "I've always kept Liz in my heart and I always will. But I've kept going in my life, trying to think of somebody who did this to her that might be close to me, that I might be friends with, that I might live with. I have no idea. I've not been okay with it, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I've just continued to show that I'm an open book to the police, that I'm here to do whatever I can to solve this." KPRC2 also spoke with a detective from the Harris County Sheriff's Office Homicide Division who's been working on this case since day one. He noted that detectives are still actively pursuing new leads. He acknowledged that Sergio had been thoroughly investigated and added, "He's been nothing but compliant. We have found nothing that would say he was involved." He explained how detectives had explored financial motives, including that life insurance policy, which still hasn't been paid out. The detective said, "Sergio has not asked for that, so what I'm trying to look at is who else maybe would have benefited from her death, and that's another avenue I'm trying to explore." The detective explained that they've utilized tools like geofencing technology and additional subpoenas are in process, and they're truly doing everything in their power to bring Liz's killer to justice. As of this recording, Liz's case remains unsolved and her family is still searching for answers. If you have any information, please contact Crime Stoppers at 713-222-TIPS or the Harris County Sheriff's Office at 713-221-6000. A $50,000 reward is available. For any updates on this case, be sure to follow me at @TheHeatherAshley on Instagram and turn on your notifications so you can join me on live anytime we talk about either today's case or any other true crime cases on your mind. If you want access to bonus episodes, ad-free episodes, or early releases of series when it comes to a first Monday of the month, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/BigMadTrueCrime. Or the easier route, if you are an iPhone user, is to just subscribe on Apple. There should be a button at the top. Ad-free episodes on Patreon are just $2 a month. And I will be bringing you guys a brand new case after next week. For July 4th, we are just going to relax and enjoy ourselves and finish all of this construction at this house. But then we'll be back. TBD on what we'll release. It'll be awesome no matter what it is. Once again, I'm ill-prepared with a review to thank you guys for. I need to ask Kyle. Kyle, when you're editing this, please send me some nice reviews because we don't need to read the bad ones. They hurt my feelings. Either way, yeah, we could get to the hot take. I feel like we're at the hot take now. This case will bother me until the end of time. The end of time. I can link the footage released in this case to a highlight under Liz's name so that you guys can watch it for yourself. It is so fucking bizarre. No matter how you slice this was planned. Whoever dressed in the muumuu, high boots, robe, or coat, that was on purpose. And no one recognizes this truck. They left the door open. So if we're thinking about all the information this killer would have to have in order to do what they did, we go into two categories: random, not random. We're not looking at random here because if it wasn't someone who knew Liz, who didn't know that she was calling off of work, having that garage sale, that Sergio was going to work, I doubt they would have ridden by earlier and then ridden nearby, then parked and waited for Sergio to leave. And also know, when before he was gonna leave. It's so meticulous. I mean, you can consider that someone in the neighborhood possibly saw 2 garage sale signs and then came up with this plan maybe the night before or even 2 a.m. the first time they rolled by the house, but that just seems so improbable. It is bizarre that a garage sale would influence someone to commit murder, but then you have to think about the vehicles. Everything would have had to have aligned. Only one vehicle was leaving, and they waited until it did. But before doing that, they put on this wild getup and possibly stormtrooper-like boots. And it almost makes you think that like this person listens to or watches true crime. And if you're listening to this, fuck off. Because they considered being caught on camera. They considered shoe impressions and whether it would lead to their size. They considered the difference between being the suspect being listed as a male or a female in a flyer or on the news, any of those things, social media, whatever. And they made it kind of difficult to tell whether it was the robe or the muumuu or the shoes. If I had to guess, because you would almost think that they would lean more towards woman if you just put all those together. My guess is that they did some measurements to nearby landmarks and estimated that this person is larger than the average woman, height, whatever. And then also you take into account that this is a truck. Duh, women drive trucks, but you're more likely to see a male driving a truck. What percentage of truck owners are male? %. Other indications are 90%. So yeah, if someone is driving a truck, there's more of a chance that it's a male unless this seemingly true crime watching person thought about that ahead of time. We're like, they're going to think I'm a man. So I'm going to put no, because if they thought that, yeah, the truck would be harder because, I mean, there'd be a paper trail if it wasn't theirs and they rented it. So what the fuck? And I mean, if they were a male that dressed like a female, they wouldn't then get into the truck to like double back and undo the thing that they threw people off from. I hope you're following this because my brain just got into it not. And then the whole good morning thing. We do garage sales with our neighborhood, and anytime anyone is walking up, even if I'm already talking to somebody else in the driveway, I always greet them or say something to them. So having a garage sale up and knowing she was like the kindest person ever, the fact that she like said, oh, hey, good morning, even though this was way before any garage sale ever opens. Usually they open at 8, but she was getting everything ready. She still was polite to them and say, hey, good morning. I wonder if she said that prior to seeing them physically. Maybe if she was like turning around, doing whatever. But then they immediately had a gun out. I wish we knew what was said in those 6 minutes because I feel like it would be so relevant to everything in this case, whether clearing it up or telling us something we just aren't considering. I don't know. But the fact that they shot her 3 times and then stood over her and shot her a 4th is fucking diabolical. And that makes it so fucking personal. And that aligns so much with the meticulous planning of all of this. And they made sure to do it like the only available time prior to her leaving the state and going on an anniversary trip. What was the stressor? What was the stressor that had this killer do what they did before she was going to be out of state for her anniversary trip? It feels so personal. They've gone through digital evidence, and geofencing is incredible. They'll set a little proximity, and it can be really small, including just like someone's yard, not even in the street. And then they can pick a time frame and tell what devices connected to something, whether it is satellite, whatever, within a certain period of time within that little circumference. It's absolutely incredible. And knowing that they've done that and it doesn't seem to have resulted in much bums me out. Also, knowing that the neighbor across the street had the security footage that filmed all of this, we can assume that if other vehicles passed by, which it did seem to trip their security camera. If other vehicles passed by and anybody else had visited the sale prior, one, it would be highly unlikely because that's an insane time to think that a garage sale is actually open on a Friday. But they would know, police would know if anyone had come by in the time after Sergio left and the shooter came by. And that's just a span of very few minutes. So I just don't foresee that happening. Not a ton of people have extra time to lollygag on a Friday morning because most people are going to work or getting their kids ready for school or to a bus stop. I mean, that's fucking insane. Abso-fucking-lutely insane. That would have been such a busy time in this neighborhood. Like I said, you're watching my brain like turn a million miles an hour, but this case will bug me until the end of time. I genuinely think this is solvable. And knowing that the Texas Rangers and the FBI are on it is really helpful. And it also is interesting. So you have to request FBI's assistance, and they're absolutely correct in saying that it offers technology or resources that are not always available to all departments, things like that. But also, generally, there are qualifiers. And we know that there was travel to Miami, and the verbiage has been very, we're looking elsewhere as well. And they've made it clear that this is a broad investigation, and crossing state lines is one of the qualifiers for a FBI involvement. That's interesting. It also could explain why nobody seemed to know shit about the frontier, and also why they didn't really have anything to do at 2 a.m. when they first rode by the house. Huh. All right. I'm going to watch this for updates and then let you guys know if I find any. Okay, love you, bye. Also, I hope the audio is okay. I'm recording on an end table while sitting on a bunk bed in a spare room. Okay, love you.